I was a curious child growing up, and I always wondered what my father was up to. One day, when I was going to go into the basement, when my father was down there, he freaked out and started me saying, "Listen to me, you must never go down the basement." And I listened. As I grew older, I never went down in the basement, but still wonder what my dad did down there. I did ask my dad, and he just said there was personal stuff down there. I didn't believe it at all, knowing there was something else down there, but one day when my dad went to work, he left the door open a little bit. I knew this was my chance. I snuck down there and made sure my mother didn't know I was going down there. It was dark, and there was a weird smell. I found the light switch, which I wish I didn't turn on the light. There was Buddy's toys laying everywhere and a bucket with what I assumed was organs in it. I wanted to puke at that moment until I heard something, and that something was my father's voice. "Honey, have you seen my phone?" I quickly turned off the lights and hid. "Why is the basement door open?" I heard him stomping down the stairs, and I held my breath trying to stay as quiet as possible. My dad looked around but gave up and went back upstairs. I couldn't believe it. My father was a murderer. I tried to get out, but the door was locked. I didn't realize there was a small window to get out. I grabbed a hammer and I smashed the window. I was barely able to get out. I started to cry. Why would my dad do this? I needed answers, but I couldn't let my dad find out, or I might be next. I wanted to call the police, but how could I when this was my own father, the man who took care of me, raised me since birth, and was always there for me. That night, I stayed up late waiting for my dad to come home. I saw the car pull in and watched him go to the trunk and grab something in a garbage bag. It looked big, then he brought it inside. I peeked downstairs and saw he was bringing it down in the basement. I snuck down and saw him opening the bags and saw him pull out body parts that were all cut up. He then grabbed his tools and started cutting his fingers off one by one while saying, "This little finger went to the market." I snuck back upstairs and wanted to call the cops, but couldn't bring myself to do it. Why would my dad be doing this? And the next night came along. My dad was making dinner, but when I looked closely it started to look weird. Then I realized what it was. Human. I was going to say something, but couldn't. My dad looked at me and wondered what my problem was. "You good, Jason?" Later, before I went to bed, I wrote down everything in a journal to keep track of everything I knew so far, then went to bed. But I started having nightmares of my dad killing innocent people just laughing. I woke up sweating, and then when I looked over, I noticed my journal was gone. I was freaking out because I couldn't remember where I placed it. I was hoping my dad didn't take it. I then heard something. It sounded like it was coming from my closet. When I was about to open, my dad burst out with a machete screaming, "You son of a bitch, now that you know, I have to fucking kill you." He then threw something at me and I realized it was my mom's head. He ran at me, but I ducked and he tripped and let go of the machete. I then grabbed the machete and stabbed it into him. He screamed loudly. I kept stabbing him until he couldn't scream anymore. Afterward, I called the police. Later, when the police arrived at my home, they then looked at all the evidence in the basement, telling me they couldn't even recognize any of the bodies. But they did say there have been quite a few many missing people reports lately, and they're all connecting to this. All I have to say is, I hope my father is burning in hell right now.